All right, today we are going to be painting a poppy, and I'm going to go through my steps in my painting. So first I'm going to start out with a background, and I'm going to mix a cool green and a slightly warmer green, using my image as a reference and testing it out on scrap paper before I put it down. And then I'm going to start with my background and work forward. So I'm going to wet all around my poppy. I could also block it off with tape if I wanted to. And I'm going to make sure I get right up to the edge and then wet my whole background as evenly as I can. I can use a bigger brush for this part. And I want to make sure it's not pooling anywhere but still evenly wet. Then I'm going to take my cool green first and kind of follow the forms of the background. These don't have to be super exact as long as you get the general feel of the background of your image. And I'm using my reference image here. Then I'm going to come in with some of the warm green, pop it in a few areas, make sure my paint isn't pooling too much in any areas. And while my paint is still wet, I'm going to go in with my smaller brush and add just a few little details. And as the water dries, it's going to kind of splay out and get a little blurry. So then I'm going to make sure once it's done, I have it nice and dry. I'm going to use my hair dryer to do that. And then my next step is going to be going into this poppy. So I'm going to mix a nice warm orange that isn't too dark, and then I'm going to wet the whole surface of the poppy because it's going to be the color underneath all of the other colors I'm laying down. So I want it to be fairly light. I don't want it to be too dark. I'm going to dry that. And then I'm going to mix a slightly darker version of that same color for the shadow areas within my poppy. And I'm going to go petal by petal and try to get my shapes and forms as accurate, but they don't have to be perfect as possible. So with this, I'm trying to just get the general movement of the forms and the light and dark areas within the leaf. I want to make sure I'm aware of the shape of my forms that I'm painting, so I don't want to work against them. I like using this big brush that has a small tip because it allows me to hold a lot of water, paint in there without having to reload my brush all the time with paint. Now that I've got the larger areas blocked in, I'm going to start getting some of the detail with a even darker red. And I've added a little bit of cool color to this as well to push it back into space. So I think I added a little bit of greenish blue. And I'm working from light to dark within each of my forms because then I'm not going to have to worry about lifting that dark paint as I go over it with lighter paint. The dark paint goes over the lighter paint and I maintain my brush strokes. Now I'm going to work into the background, so I'm going to work on some of those stems of the poppies. And I'm going to go from light to dark. So I'm just putting down really light green first, and then I'm going to mix a little bit darker green and get some of those kind of hairy edges of the poppy stems. That's what I like about painting poppies especially. They have these weird stems and they move in all different directions. I'm going to also go back into my flower now that it's dry and pop some of those shadow areas a little bit further just to define those. And add just another layer of light warm green to the background just to give it more visual interest. Dry it, remove my tape, and I'm done and ready to go.